There's no such thing as being a worthless person. There's no such thing as being not good enough. And when you start to realize that healing in yourself, you begin to change the way you look at other people automatically. You find compassion. You start to see behind what's causing them to be as they are, even if being as they are is not particularly nice at the moment. You begin to find what's called Christ consciousness. There's a lot of lip service to Christ consciousness happening in the New Age movement right now. I've met some amazing people who will arrogantly, clue number one that they're not here, arrogantly say, my 12 strands are activated. My 12-strand DNA is activated. I'm an avatar now. And it's like, yeah? Oh, good. Can you give me like a lesson in levitation? And they look at you and blink. Well, what does that mean? What do you mean, what does it mean? You're in Christ consciousness. You're an avatar, right? You have 12 strands activated. With 12 strands activated, you can levitate. You can appear and disappear at will. All right? Then they get mad. They get mad at me. Well, fine. And I have a lot of them do like this thing. In the name of Archangel Michael, I ban you from my life, right? Because I challenge their belief system. The flaming blue sword of Michael. And I was like, hey, excuse me, I only, asked you to like put the proof where your mouth is, that's all. And the only reason I do that to somebody is if they're displaying arrogance about it. Because if somebody's telling me out of one side of their mouth that they're in Christ consciousness, and out of the other side of their mouth they're patting themselves on the back and puffing their chest up and thinking how great they are compared to lowly little you, it's showing you they're not there. There's a lot of lip service going on in the New Age movement. And by the time you get done with this course, you'll be able to spot some of it. For those of you hardy souls who are also coming to the Templar course, you'll be able to spot a lot more. Okay? Because in the Templar course, at this point, we're naming names of who's teaching what. And we're letting people know what ascension teachings are part of the original founders' teachings and what ones are not. And what ones are meant to trick you into using your energy in ways that's not good for you or the planet. But it stays pretty benign in Kathara healing. In Kathara healing, we deal with learning to be empowered again by getting back our consciousness, getting back an awareness of our body parts and how to use our mind to direct energy. One of the real interesting transitions I've found is, okay, once you know all this stuff, it's like a bicycle. You can learn how to ride it, right? And then you leave it parked against the side of the house and you keep walking to town every day. And you're saying, yeah, the bike's still there. I could ride it. Same thing here. If you can learn this stuff, but if you don't use it, we're taught here to use our consciousness in only a 3D way. So we look for the 3D solutions first. Once you learn Kathara healing, and you're having an issue come up in your life, or a healing issue come up in your life, instead of letting the autopilot kick in, where you just go run to the doctor, and you put your book away, and you're not even going to run any technique because you don't feel good. If you run the technique, it'll help you feel better. You have to get on the bicycle and ride it. So you can learn how to ride a bike. You can learn how to do Kathara healing. But the results, if you're going to find results, personal results, they're not going to come from parking the book on your shelf. They're going to come from getting to the point where you don't even need the book because you've integrated it, where you've learned how to do the techniques. See, it's the techniques. You can learn everything you want to around it, which is helping your mental body to expand so it can hold the frequency that you're trying to bring through. This is why we teach in detail, because your mental body is very important. It needs to know, or it will block out the rest of the frequencies coming in. So you learn your stuff, but then you apply it. The change comes with repetition of using the technologies, which are simple exercises, some not so simple, they have lots of steps. What's nice about Kathara healing too is what starts out in the beginning, it's going to take you quite a few steps, and it's a pain in the neck to have to do it, frequently. Where, I even get like that, oh no, not my Maharaj seal again, that kind of stuff. However, if I want D12 frequency running through my body, I know I need to run my Maharaj seal. But the more you work with the techniques, the more shortcuts will come up, where you don't have to run a 26-step technique. You can get the same thing accomplished in 4. But you need to start with the long version to build the frequency, to get that imprint back in to your active template so it can be sent through the DNA. It's building critical mass. So that's why the stuff that starts out has quite a few steps to it. Eventually, after you get done with Kathara 1, you'll find that we've moved, since Kathara was given, we've moved into what's called a Maharic quick seal, where you literally can do what takes 26 steps in the beginning in like an instant, running a Maharic seal. We'll talk about Maharic seal as we get into more of the body of Kathara. But I want you to know in the beginning, so you don't get disheartened by saying, oh my God, 26 steps, I fall asleep on step 14. You know? If you keep working with it, you'll get past step 14, and you'll find that you don't fall asleep until step 24. And then eventually you'll find, as your DNA activates to hold those frequencies, you actually make it all the way through the exercise. Then, the more you use it, you'll find your body takes over and does them. You'll be visualizing something, and all of a sudden you jump 4 steps ahead. And just keep up with yourself, because your body's integrated the technique that you've taught it. So it will teach you shortcuts and how to do it faster so you can get the same frequency running without having to go through all the steps. So instead of getting disheartened looking at 26 steps and saying, I can't do this for the rest of my life, you don't have to do this for the rest of your life. It's the beginning with any of these techniques. Once they're set into the body manually and energized, it's like watering a garden. Once you water them in the DNA template enough, eventually they will take hold and start to sprout on their own, where these frequencies will become a natural, awake part in your body. It's almost like having a part of you that really wants to come into body, but it keeps falling asleep on the job, and you have to use the manual techniques to keep waking and say, yo, you're coming down here, you're coming in my body. You know, we're going to be one. Come on, soul, come into the body. When you work with it that way, eventually it stays awake. What you're doing is getting your DNA template to behave differently than it has since you were born, to behave differently than it has in your last 20 incarnations. So it takes a bit of time. If the planetary grids were perfect right now, and they were perfectly in their own divine blueprint, which they're not, they just started to be able to run D12 frequency back in. There's a lot of repair. If they were in good shape, we wouldn't have to spend so much time learning how to do these techniques. We'd do them once or twice and they'd stick, because the planetary grids themselves would help support that pattern in the body. But right now what we're doing is we are actually resisting the planetary grids, because the planetary grids are still trying to send their distortions into the body. So whatever work you just did, in 12 hours, the planetary grids are going to hit a critical mass of energy in your body again and flip it back over to its mutated pattern, because the mutations are still in the planetary grids. It takes a lot longer time to completely clear a planetary grid than it does to clear your own body grid. So as long as you take responsibility to manually reset in your body the divine blueprint, you not only will be able to sustain more and more levels of DNA activation and DNA repair and getting more of your consciousness in body, but you'll progressively help the planet to heal its grids faster. Because just as the planet sends us energy into our bodies, we send energy back into the planet. Right now we've been making each other sick for 25,000 years. If we begin these processes of healing the DNA, we will heal what we send back into the planetary grids. And each one of us is like a walking piece of the planet. If we get ourselves healed to a higher level, that piece of the planet becomes healed, which means the planet becomes more able to sustain healing for the whole race. So it's like a love affair between person and planet, where you realize you are an energy system, a spirit that is an energy system that has the ability, by the choices you make right now and each day, to directly affect the outcome of the whole. You can change a piece of the world, and you start with you. So there's a huge amount of growth that we can all get by working with the concepts and the teachings of the Kathara. They're sacred teachings, because you look at the word sacred and you think of, okay, well, sacred, that's the stuff like that religions teach you about, right? Or they're supposed to anyway. What does the Bible call sacred? What does the Quran call sacred? What do, Buddha traditions call sacred? Everybody has a different interpretation of sacred. What none of them tend to do, though, is they teach you about sacred, but not many of them, the Easterns do a little bit better, teach you how to get sacred into the body as a reality. These teachings are very sacred, because they are the teachings that all of the original sacred teachings were built on and edited from. So we're in the middle of a renaissance of consciousness, where we're moving toward one of two things, and it depends completely on the choices we make as to what we want to learn and what we don't want to learn. We are either moving into a genuine new age of enlightenment, more enlightenment than has been here in thousands and thousands of years, or we are moving toward a new dark ages, where we buy into a bunch of nonsense that's being put out right now, propaganda, false ascension mechanics, new age mumbo jumbo that has twists in it, traditional mumbo-jumbo that was edited so long ago nobody remembers what the original was. If we have the courage to be open to learning the new information that's coming, that it's really the old information being brought back, and have the courage to say, well, the Bible, I always taught was a holy book and a good book, but it turns out, wow, the Council of Nicaea took out, a good 90% of it. Gee, what was in those other teachings? You begin to look at the difference between the letter of the law as it's been fed to you in your culture and the spirit of the law, of what it was trying to tell you originally, before it was passed down through the hands of men so long, men, women, I'm not being sexist here, to the point where the original truth and the spirit of it got lost. I have faith in people on this planet. When you show them, particularly with Kathara, the structure, how simple it actually is to reclaim. There's not a whole lot of mumbo-jumbo. You don't have to read like 200 million volumes of some Eastern text that's being hidden by the Tibetans. It's really not that hard. Once you realize this, anybody, most people with common sense will say, yeah, really, that makes sense. That feels right. Because there's a part of each of us that remembers. There's a part of each of us that remembers right now, that's in the higher dimensional fields, that knows we're at one with Source. So this will resonate with the part deep inside, but there may be a lot of programs that sit over that part. If we've been raised strict Christian or strict Muslim or strict anything else, we're going to have to make a choice between dogma and new information. Did God die and doesn't talk to people anymore? This is how they treat those books. Once upon a time, God wrote books. Did he come down with a pen? No. He talked to people in their heads, and they wrote it down. Where'd the Bible come from? People don't ask the right questions in this society because they're not taught to. You go to a Christian church, and you ask, well, okay, where'd the Bible come from? God wrote it. Okay. When? Well, they don't know either. They mean well. They're after the Spirit. But they get so stuck on just the book, and they don't realize the book has been manipulated, and it's not just the Bible. Every religious text on this planet has been toyed with, messed with, and edited. So if we have the courage to move past dogma and into a natural curiosity of, okay, if there's more to it than that, what is it? And you start to apply that with these type of things that you can learn about your direct connection, you will grow. You'll grow probably so rapidly that your neighbors or your church group might think you're nuts, or they might tell you you're possessed by the devil. People, there's some groups of people that are more attached to their dogma than they are to God. And that's sad, because the dogma, the religion, stands between them and God instead of being the vessel through which they can get into a relationship with God. You may find people like that get very judgmental. I've had Jehovah's Witnesses come to my door, bless them. And I always I don't discriminate against anybody. And they come and they say, oh, can we talk to you? It's like, yeah, I know you want to convert me to being a Jehovah's Witness. Oh, no, we don't convert anybody. We just share our truth. Okay. So that'd be nice. I let them come in. And because I figure, well, fair is fair, and you're going to share your truth, and that means I can share my truth with you too, right? Not, right? They come in. They would come into my house, very sweet people in the beginning, and and we'd have wonderful conversations about the nature of God and God being a loving God and all sorts of things, and we agreed wonderfully. And then they would come back to, do you call your God Jehovah? I said, well, I understand that a lot of people need to do that, but I don't need to call my God Jehovah to know that my God is with me in there. And immediately they turn into something else. That if they were like that when they first knocked on the door, you wouldn't let them in. Said, you're evil. You're possessed by Satan. They turn into like these judgmental, mean people. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. I invited you in my house because you wanted to talk to me. You're drinking my tea. You're sitting in my kitchen, and now you're calling me evil and calling me names. I think you can leave now. I mean, you may find as you grow spiritually and start to throw out some of the trash that you feel you don't need. I'm not going to tell you what you need and what you don't need. But as you grow to understand your relationship with Source and it expands in you, it'll start to edit itself. You'll start to tell yourself, I don't need that. That was an old belief. I see where that doesn't work. You'll get rid of stuff. But people who aren't ready to get rid of stuff yet, especially if they're close to you, will try to nail you down. It's like you're trying to fly and they're trying to nail your feet to the ground. And you will find this. Sometimes it will bring you pain. Sometimes the growth experience is painful because you will find yourself growing at a rate that is so much faster than the other people around you. And you will realize you've learned enough through yourself that you can never go back to looking at things the way they did. Once upon a time you might have shared those beliefs, so you understand where they were, but once you get behind them, you can never go back. Once you start to open the living Spirit of God inside of you and feel it through your own energy systems, and feel you're at oneness with Source, and realize God's not passing judgment on you. If anybody's going to judge you, it's only you. You can realize that you don't need those beliefs anymore. But if other people don't realize it, you will get tests. You will give yourself tests in your outer world to determine whether or not you've really integrated that teaching. Do you really believe that Spirit's alive in you and you can feel it and you really don't need that Bible anymore? You may have a whole year of people pumping Bible in your face on every dogma angle you can imagine, calling you names, making you feel bad. And the worst is when the universe sends to you someone who appears to have the same ideas, of the opposite gender perhaps, where you just feel, my perfect companion, we understand each other perfectly. And then all of a sudden you start to find, oh yeah, there's that Christian slant happening, and Christian's good, I'm a Christian. These teachings are Christian. These are Christian teachings because they're the original Essene Christian teachings. But you'll find dogma seeping in. And some of the ultimate tests that we put ourselves through are what means more to us. Our power and relationship and love that we have through Source, or trying to fill that gap by external relationship. And many times we'll be challenged with, are we willing to walk away from everything? It might be money, it might be houses, it might be people. Sometimes it might even be children. What means more to you? Your relationship with something out here in the hologram, or your relationship to God? Is what